Hi everybody! I figured that since King of Fighters 15 is now on the horizon, I might as well go over a list of characters that I really want to see come back to this game. This list is mostly going to be characters who were in King of Fighters 14, but there will be a couple exceptions, mostly because they're newcomers, and I would love to see some of these newcomers come back. King of Fighters 15 is extremely exciting because for quite a while we haven't had any new fighting games from like mainline flagship series. Street Fighter, Tekken, and Mortal Kombat are all still on their current latest installments that have came out a year or more ago, and King of Fighters' last entry was in 2016, so I'm very excited to see where this installment goes. Before I get into the list of characters, I also want to give some main hopes to this game. One of the devs in a video in the announcement trailer for the big reveal event that's coming up soon, I'm hoping to have this out either the day of or shortly after, that the game is going to have some less ordered / structured teams. The dev said that we're going to have a little bit more unorthodox teaming this time, and I'm very happy for that. King of Fighters 11 is, despite not being a game I've ever played, is a roster I really admire just because of how out there the team selection was, and I'm excited to see that experimentation again. I love seeing new team dynamics in King of Fighters. It's something I wish we'd get more of, and I'm very happy 15 is going to do that. I'm also hoping that we will be able to get rollback netcode in this game. We're still in a pandemic, and local tournaments are just not going to keep the game alive. Assuming that the pandemic is for the most part over with by the end of 2021, if the game has good rollback netcode, assuming this is coming out in 2021, it could be really good for the tournament scene of this game. Not only just for the casuals who just want to play online. Tournaments online could be ran very well. I believe it was King of Fighters 2002 that recently got this big rollback update. I'm hoping that SNK does what they can to keep this game from just kind of falling by the wayside. I feel like King of Fighters 14 kind of did that. Also, do know before I go into this list of characters that there will be some plot spoilers for King of Fighters 13 and 14, with the ending showing that Verse is kind of unleashed in a revival of quite a few characters. Some of these characters are going to appear on the list, and this is unordered, this isn't in a specific order. I'm just kind of rambling about characters I really like in this. I'm hoping that if there are any characters that I didn't bring up that you want to see come back that weren't in 14, please bring it up in the comments. I'd love to talk about King of Fighters with people. My first selection is kind of just a group of characters, really. It's more Garo Mark of the Wolves characters. We got Rock Howard towards the end of King of Fighters 14, which, while yes, he realistically shouldn't be a teenager by this point, I believe he would still be a young child in Terry's care. I think it'd be really fun to bring more Garo characters back, because there's a lot of popular ones. King of Fighters 14 also brought back Tizok, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing his name correctly, and reintroduced him as King of Dinosaurs, and such a fun character. He went from this heroic wrestling character to wanting to be a heel, but being really bad at being a heel, and I think that's such a fun concept. There's also two other characters I'd love to see come back. We're in past King of Fighters games, but we're also introduced through Garo Mark of the Wolves. Bon Jeanette is surprisingly a very fun character. I love using her wind powers, and I think she's a very flirty, very energetic and fun character. Not only would she appeal to people who love fan service and fighting games, she'd be a very fun playstyle to have back, and I'd love to see her reintroduced with a proper 3D model. Because I believe she was in one of the 3D King of Fighters games from the 2000s that we don't talk about. I think giving her the Rock Howard-esque touch-up that he got in King of Fighters 14 could work wonders for her. Another character is Gato. Not a character I'm specifically a big fan of, but I know lots of people really like him. Adding a character like that would make a lot of people happy and hype a lot of people up, but that's why I'm including him here. I guess if you want, you could also include Hotaru, but she's not really a character I'm particularly fond of. There's not that many characters from Garo that I'm a huge fan of. I really enjoy Tizok and Rock. I enjoy Jeanette. I personally enjoy Marco. I think the twins were fun, but like I don't even think they're adults yet in the mainline King of Fighters games. The only problem with introducing the Garo characters is some of them are children or adoptive children of previous cast members, and it'd be really hard to include them in King of Fighters in like a main base roster. I think if you sold some of these characters as DLC, it could work. I think Gato and T-Talk will fit right in the base roster perfectly. As for like B. Jeanette and Rock, you might have to do DLC again for Rock, and definitely B. Jeanette, because I believe they're like 19 or 20 in age. I don't know, I'm just very excited for these, like the possibility of more Garo characters making it into this game. Character on this list is Chizuru. I'm surprised Chizuru has not come back, or Maki, just the Kagura twins in general. I think with Verse being dead, Maki could potentially come back, and that would be a very interesting plotline to have Chizuru come back. I think it'd be really fun to have Kyo, Iori, and Chizuru as a team in a mainline game again, because if I remember correctly, the last time we had that was 97. I don't remember the last time Chizuru actually showed up in a mainline game, but she's just a very elegant, pretty, badass character that I think a lot of people would be extremely happy for her to come back. King of Fighters 15, my biggest hope for in general, aside from what I mentioned previously, is that the roster doesn't include too many newcomers. I think maybe 5 or 6 is fine. I know we're going to get at least a couple. I know for sure we're going to get a new character that's going to be Shune's rival. I think the game should focus on bringing back some fan favorites who have not had a proper 3D appearance, and Chizuru is definitely one of them. I think a lot of people would be really happy with Chizuru. Another character I'd love to see come back is Kasumi Toto. I believe that she's mostly involved with the women's fighters team, and that team has had so many different women show up throughout the series. I don't think they're gonna change things up too much. I believe Mai is still gonna be in that team. For all we know, King and Yuri could be brought in to like be partners with Ryo and Robert. We don't really know yet. The women's team could look completely different for all we know. We don't know what's going on. Kasumi is not the flashiest or most interesting looking, but the idea of a teenage girl that takes up her father's fighting style and is traveling the world kicking ass to try to find her father is an interesting concept, and I'd love to see where it goes. Kasumi is relatively popular, I think, because she was in Capcom vs. SNK Chaos, which is quite an odd game in of itself in terms of its roster. But Kasumi showing up in that game out of all characters kind of shows that there is like an audience for her, and that SNK does like her. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. This is pretty much a joke pick. I would love to see Duck King come back. I think he's such an oddball character that I don't even know where the hell you could put this man in like a team. Maybe you could put him in like a Dance Battlers team. You could have him and Zarina, and I believe there's probably another I'm just forgetting about. But I think if maybe you play him in one of those types of teams, he could thrive really well. And I think King of Fighters could benefit from having like a more loose comedic character here and there. I just think Duck King is such a funny character, and I wish that I had a game where I could play as him. I know there's plenty I could go out and find, but since I have 2002 UM and I have King of Fighters Neo Wave and a bunch of these games where they take the all-stars and pretty much as many characters as possible and put them into one game, Duck King, I could probably have better luck finding him in a Fatal Fury. He would be a very fun inclusion, and I think SNK should include him. I want to see how his stance would look, because he has like the weirdest stance. I love the stances in SNK games, like especially in King of Fighters. Like I could just look at Shermie or Whip or Duck King's like standard stances on loop and just get so much entertainment out of it. Duck King, in short, is such a silly, odd, fun character that I think SNK should bring him back, but I won't be disappointed if he doesn't come back. This character isn't really popular, but he's one that I personally really enjoy, and his name is Seth. He has been pushed to the sidelines so hard compared to Vanessa and Ramon, who were two of his original teammates. I'm personally upset that this man has not appeared. He had cameos in King of Fighters 13, but absolutely nothing since. And Vanessa and Ramon have both been added to King of Fighters 14 again, so I'd love to see Seth come back. I'd love to see the Agents team come back. And if it's not Ramon in that team, if he stays with Angel and T-Zoc, I think it'd be really cool if we had Blue Mary, Vanessa, and Seth as a team. Just something new, something fun. I'd love to see this character come back. But at the same time, Mian exists, and they have very similar playstyles where it's a lot of drop kicks and a lot of air dives. I think Mian could be intended to be his functional replacement. I don't know, I think both could function in the same game. I'd love to see Seth come back. He's an underrated character in my opinion. I think he just deserves a bit of a redesign, like a new outfit or something. Something to make people really appreciate his return. I just miss Seth, and I'd love to see him interact with Vanessa and Ramon again. I just think that'd be really fun. These next two characters aren't ones that I'm super into, but I know a lot of people are into, and I just think that with Kim Cap-Hwan's team changing so much to the point where like there's new members every game, I feel like that should slow down. I would love to see Jun and Maylie come back. Jun has such a pretty looking design, and I think he would work really well. Maybe if you kept Kim's team from King of Fighters 14, but you replaced the one guy with Jun. I can't even remember his name. It's the one guy that's with Luong. And I only know Luong because she's just the thought in the team. Maylie is such a cute character too. She reminds me of like Power Rangers and like all these like Japanese action shows. I think that's a really cute concept that should be included in fighting games more. It's just teenagers that act like superheroes. I think that's really fun. I think Maylie would make a lot of people happy. Like hell, put her in the women's team. You know what? Like Bon, Jeanette, Maylie, Kasumi, they could all be in the women's team. They could be like a new women's team, a younger women's team. I think that'd be really fun. King of Fighters 15 is going to have some really interesting team dynamics. I cannot wait to see it. Maylie could fit into so many different teams. In Jun too. Like there's a lot you could do with these characters. And I'm hoping at least one of them comes back. I think Maylie has like the bigger shot because she's been a character that's been requested for quite a while. I just think SNK has a large selection of characters that they don't take enough advantage of, and that's to be expected. I think King of Fighters is like the hugest pantheon of characters they could pick from. Like even Tekken probably doesn't even crack the amount of characters that King of Fighters has had over the years. I think Jun and Maylie would be very obvious choices to bring into this game, at least one of them. Again, Maylie probably, but Jun would also make a lot of people happy. I'm just hoping that we don't have a situation where a lot of characters that fans have been requesting are not brought in, but I feel like SNK listens to their fans enough that we'll avoid a situation like that. Now, for 4 characters that I am very much hoping show up in this game, oh lord, it's Ash Crimson, Elizabeth Blanktorch, Duolon, and Shenwu. All 4 of the main characters from the Ash Crimson saga. Where do I begin? Ash is such a great character. I love that this like sassy bitch just shows up to take people's powers and then pretty much nearly cause the apocalypse for like 3 different games until the end where he's like, I'm just gonna sacrifice myself and save everybody. So I'm not as much as a bad person as you thought. A villain protagonist is what King of Fighters needed, and Ash Crimson was perfect. And I think these 4, at least Ash and Elizabeth, are locks. Elizabeth shows up in Kukri's team's ending in King of Fighters 14. The 2 were revealed to have been working together, and Ash is pretty much brought back to life. So that pretty much just confirms Ash outright. I feel like he's probably the most likely out of all these characters to make it. Then Elizabeth, underrated queen. I love this woman. I have been trying to get good at her in King of Fighters 13. I'm just bad at King of Fighters. I would love to play Elizabeth in a game where I can actually play it confidently. I think she's a very cool character. I feel bad for her. I think she was a really good dude protagonist in King of Fighters 13. And seeing her cameo in 14 with a plot setup is so good. Probably the second most likely character. I'm hoping she gets a good redesign. I'm hoping her redesign isn't the weird corset look from King of Fighters 11, where she had her tits out for no real reason. I much prefer her design in King of Fighters 13. I think she looked a lot more respectful and modest, and honestly, you can take her more seriously as a character when she isn't there to be clearly sexual. Elizabeth is just a super cool character, and I'm kind of hoping she makes it. Duolon is like if you took a bunch of characters that I love from other fighting games and threw them into a blender. You have the stretchiness that Necro from Street Fighter has. You have cool poison powers that I definitely love in fighting games in general. You have just this mystical assassin aesthetic. with a lot of smoky attacks. Makes me think of Smoke from Mortal Kombat. Duo-Lon was my favorite character to use in King of Fighters 13. And imagining him in a 3D King of Fighters game with a much easier move list and gameplay style to pull off, that would make me really happy. In Shenwu, not a character I'm super into, but I just think that because of how popular all the other characters are, and I know there's some people that really like Shen. Max Dude played a lot of Shen on his King of Fighters 13 videos, and I think that'd be a character that would make him happy. I just want all 4 of these characters to come back. That would make me happy. It's my biggest wish in this roster. And the sad thing is I still have 4 more characters to talk about. Jesus Lord, I have been recording for over 17 minutes. This is gonna be a pain in the ass to edit. Okay, Nash. She's my favorite newcomer from King of Fighters 14. I think she looks really cool. I love her design. I love how her moves look. I love that there's a Saudi Arabian character in a fighting game, especially one that's developed outside of America. That's not something you typically see, and I love that SNK actually got some help from Saudi Arabia to have the character design. If I remember correctly, I believe a fan designed Nash. She managed to get included in the game. I'd have to look it up, but with all this work put into her, I'd hate to see her be a one-and-done character. I hope she's in 15. I hope she's in 15, and I hope she's plot relevant. That would be really fun. Just give this character a bigger shot. And as for the last 3 characters, it's a team, and it's a very obvious choice, and I feel like they're gonna make it. It's the New Faces team from 97. Yashiro, Shermie, and Chris. Shermie was brought in to SNK Heroines, and as much as a godless, horrid game that is, it definitely revitalized interest in her, and I think that's what Shermie deserves. I think a lot of people would really like Shermie, and we can't have Shermie in a mainline King of Fighters without Chris and Yashiro. Now, the question is, are they normal? Is it just their normal versions? Do we have the Orochi versions? Are we going to bring back the Orochi plotline? There's just so much you can do, and I feel like there's a lot of potential, and a lot of people want to see them come back. Shermie especially. I think Shermie's great. I love that she's a evil cultist that wants to bring the end of the world, but she disguises herself as like a bimbo fashionista musician. I love that concept so much. I think she's fun to play in 2002 UM, and this is coming from someone who, for the most part, isn't good as like playing grappler characters, but there are exceptions. I think they would bring a lot of needed hype to King of Fighters 15. This game is going to be really exciting. I'm hoping for the best for this game, and I might have to do like another video where I look back at this wishlist and just see how many actually made it in. I'm hoping that my laptop will be able to run King of Fighters 15, because I'd love to make videos about it whenever that comes out. Just me playing it, just kind of screwing around in combos and training, maybe even online matches, who knows. I'm just excited that a new fighting game in a series I like is coming out, because Street Fighter hasn't had like an actual full new release since 2016. Mortal Kombat 11 is a massive disappointment. I need something new, and I'm very, very hopeful and very confident King of Fighters 15 will be exactly that.